Hello everyone, I am Kapila here, your English teacher, and we'll take up the rest of the part of the chapter, The Best Christmas Present in the World, today. In part 1 and 2 in the previous video, we had seen that the author brought a roll-top desk, and while mending the roll-top desk, he had found a black tin box on which was cellotaped a note on a lined paper. And when he read the letter, he came to know that the letter was from Jim Macpherson to Connie Macpherson, that is Mrs. Jane Macpherson. And the letter was about the Christmas celebration that both the Fritz and Tommies they had there in the war field. So it was really very unusual. It was an experience which was lifetime, and Jim could not forget that experience. So that had been shared, right? And then at the end of the letter, he promised that very soon the war would be over and he would be coming back home soon. Till there we had done in the previous video. Now let us begin with the third part of the story. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove to Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beeches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned out shell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. Macpherson. Oh yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed. But at her age, she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity, because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now, he told me, Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. So, after reading the letter the whole night, the author could not sleep and he knew what he had to do. So he went to the address that was given there on the note, on the letter, and when he went there, he found that the whole house had been burnt down. And then the windows, they were all shattered and they were lying there like that, only the doors were open and like that. Still, he went and knocked and nobody answered. Then there was a man there, there was a boy there. He made inquiries with them, and then he came to know that Mrs. Macpherson, she had been shifted to Burlington House or nursing home, right? And the age also, he came to know it was 101 years old. Now let us do the comprehension check questions. Why did the author go to Bridport? The author went to Bridport because he wanted to meet the owner of the letter, and maybe he wanted to give the letter back to the owner. How old was Mrs. Macpherson now? Where was she? Mrs. Macpherson was 101 years old and she was in Burlington House nursing home. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on the top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not with the others, she told me. She is rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, you know. No one visits, so I am sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. So he went there. Easily he was able to find Burlington House. He went there and he found that the whole place, it was decorated with paper chains, etc. People were wearing hats and celebrations were on. He came to know that, with a Christmas tree also somewhere. And the matron told this author that she was not kept with all the others because she had no family, she was not in a good mood, and maybe she would feel good to have a visitor. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. "I found this. I think it's yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. For a while, she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. So when the author went to her, she was sitting on a wheelchair and how she was with a wispy bun there, and then the author said Happy Christmas, but there was no expression on the face until the author gave that box to her, and that she recognized, and very tenderly she was stroking that box and along with the letter. And she was not listening to anything what the author was telling. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest," she said. "And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down." So she was assuming that man, the author, to be Jim. She was not listening to anything, and she told Jim, the author, that he had promised and he had come, and he asked the author to come close and then sit down by her side. I sat down beside her and she kissed my cheek. I read your letter so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. So she was assuming the author to be Jim. She was really very happy. She was having so many things which she would be doing with the husband there, and she asked him to read the letter, and she was very happy at that moment. And she was wishing that she would be spending time with the husband. Very emotional moment, because for years she had been waiting for the husband to come back. So this is what happens when the people, they go to war and they never come back. How the people there back at home, they suffer. So this is the suffering of this woman, this wife here, who's longing for her husband to come back, and in that pain and grief she has lost her senses, and she thinks the author to be the husband. Now let us do the comprehension check questions. Who did Connie Macpherson think her visitor was? Connie Macpherson thought that her visitor was her husband Jim. Which sentence in the text shows that the visitor did not try to hide his identity? Now, when Connie requested him to read the letter and asked him to sit down, at that moment the sentence is written, and there is no conversation or no reply of the author that tells us that the author also did not reveal his identity, because he was not able to understand what he should do. Should he take away the happiness, the momentous happiness that the woman had got, or should he let the woman be happy? Now let us do the questions of working with text. Question 1. For how long do you think Connie had kept Jim's letter? Give reasons for your answer. I think Connie must have kept Jim's letter for years, because because of the box that the author had found in that last drawer of the table, because it had written on it to be buried. So either she was dead or she must have kept that letter for long with her. If you have some more reasons, you can add it into your answer. Question 2. Why do you think the desk had been sold and when? The desk must have been sold after the fire and water had taken toll on it, when maybe the house caught fire. Right? We come to know that when the author went there to the address, he found that the house was burnt, and that is why the table must have been sold. Question 3. Why do Jim and Hans think that games or sports are good ways of resolving conflicts? Do you agree? See, Jim and Hans, they think that games are the best way of resolving conflicts, because while you play a game, no child is orphaned, no women are widowed, and nobody dies. So that is why it is the best way. I also agree to it. And whether you agree or not, please do write that along with a justification for your answer. Question 4. Do you think the soldiers of the two armies are like each other or different from each other? Find evidence from the story to support your answer. So when you read the second part of the story, we come to know that both of them, they wanted to play, they wanted to have games, they wanted the resolution of the war through games only. They shared schnapps, they shared eatables also, and they laughed, they sang carols. So they were common. So many things were common, and they were not different from each other. They were all humans. Question 5. Mention the various ways in which the British and the German soldiers become friends and find things in common at Christmas. We have already discussed it in the previous question. So the same things you are going to write over here. That is, they played the football match, both of them. They talked to each other. They laughed with each other. They wished a happy Christmas to each other. They shared the eatables and drinks with each other. And later on at night, when they were in their trenches, they also answered back by singing carols to each other. Question 6. What is Coney's Christmas present? Why is it the best Christmas present in the world? So Coney's Christmas present is the author himself when he goes there. That is the best, and it is the best Christmas present in the world, because Coney had been waiting for her husband to return for years and years. And that day finally, when the author went there with that black tin box and the letter sellotaped on it, she thought him to be the husband, and that is the reason why it was the best Christmas present for her in the world. Question 7. Do you think the title of this story is suitable for it? Can you think of any other title? I think this is the most justified title for the story, because the whole story is about Christmas, and Christmas is all about presents, and the present that she received that particular Christmas was the best in the world for her. So for me, this title is justified. But if you have some other title, you may write that along with your own justification for the title. Now, let us do the exercise that is there under the heading of working with language. The exercise is based upon verbs and tenses. We already know the 3 forms of verb, and we know that the second form of the verb is there for past tense. So the first exercise that is given here is to underline the past tense words from the passage. I'll just do the first sentence of the passage for you, and the rest you are going to do. Let us see. A man got on the train and sat down. This is the first sentence. So got and sat. Those are the 2 words here in the first sentence. Similarly, you will find out the past tense here from this passage. Now, the second part of the exercise deals with past and past perfect. When 2 events or actions, they happen in the past, then the action that has happened earlier, there we use past perfect, and the action that happened later, we used past. For example, the train had left the station when I reached, or before I reached. Okay, so the action of leaving of the train that had happened earlier, so I have used past perfect over there, and the action of reaching the station, that also happened in past only, but a little later than the train left, so I am using past. Now another use of past perfect is for wishes also. I wish I had had a roll top desk, right? That way. So for wishes also we can use past perfect. The next exercise that is there in working with language is based upon this concept. So words are given over there in the bracket, and accordingly you see whether the action has happened earlier, then you write past perfect along with that word that is given over there, and if it is the action that has happened later on, then you just write the past form of that word that is given in the exercise. So this way you will do the second exercise also. Okay. The third part of the same exercise deals with words which are given over there. In the sentences are given here, and there are two actions happening. So there is a column of past and earlier past. So you have to write in the column of past the action that has taken place a little later than the earlier action. So this way you will do the third exercise also. Read the sentence properly, then find out wherever there is past perfect, obviously that is the earlier past, and wherever there is only past tense, then that is the past. Okay, so do the exercise in that manner. Now, if we see the next exercise, it is based upon phrasal verbs, right? Here, the phrase has got two parts. The first one is the verb and the second one is the preposition. And when they are taken together, the meaning is really different than the parts. Like the verb meaning is there, then the preposition meaning is there, but when they are taken together, the meaning is not the same as their parts. So certain phrasal verbs are given over here. You are supposed to find the meaning from the dictionary and then use them in sentences of your own. So you'll have to write sentence using these phrasal verbs. Now next is noun phrase. So in the chapter, there was a sentence that the author found a small black tin box. So now here in this phrase, we have three adjectives that have been used before the noun box. So this is termed as a noun phrase, okay, where the adjectives are used before a noun. And there is an order also. See, first is size, then you have the color, and then you have the material. Okay, and we cannot use more than 4 adjectives before the noun. So similarly, you have the exercise, you have the words being given over there, and then you have to write the words against each noun that is there. Like elephant is given, so for elephant, first you will write the size, then the color, then the material, if certain words are mentioned there in that exercise. So you complete the exercise like that. Now we'll do some writing exercises. Like in the chapter, we read that both the British soldiers and the German soldiers, they wanted to resolve war through a football match. Similarly, if you also have any idea in 2 or 4 lines, you should be writing about that. Then next writing exercise would be where again a short paragraph you have to write about what kind of a present would you like to have on any festival, and when you buy festival for other people, what all things do you keep in mind, and what should we give as a present to the other people. So on that you write just a short paragraph. Then the next exercise that is there in the writing skill is about a diary entry and a letter writing. The questions are here. The diary entry is about Jim. Supposing that Jim came back after the war, then what did he see there in the city, how it was, what all changes had happened. So about that he writes a diary entry. Okay, the beginning line is given here and you can continue writing, and at the end you'll write Jim. Okay, just the first name. And the second writing exercise here in this section is about writing a letter. Supposing you are the visitor who goes to visit there to Mrs. Coney Macpherson in the nursing home, and then you have to write about the feelings, what all happened over there and why you did not reveal the identity or what you should have done. So about that you write a letter. Okay. The next exercise is story writing here, and outlines have been given to you, you complete the story. That's all for now. See you in the next video. You can download the book from the link given here in the description.